Films have been such a large part of society, our art, and our culture for just about 100 years now. We've had 100 years of scares like never before, laughter not before experienced, drama previously unseen, and the type of tension unfelt by many prior. I've spoken about film numerous times on this channel, and I hope you all know now how much this form of visual storytelling means to me. To tell stories is my all. And for my 50th video, what better topic to cover than something I enjoy, spiced up with a bit of controversy, because the world of cinema isn't without its problems. Throughout cinema's lifespan, there have been multiple times where a movie has come out, or not even released because its subject matter is just way too controversial, that society wasn't ready for it, or it was just plain off for one reason or another. It's important to note that this isn't the darkest list, this isn't the most messed up list. I'm going to stick within the YouTube guidelines and all that. With that being said, I hope you enjoy my 50th video, because this is the most controversial movies Iceberg explained. First up we have Ghostbusters 2016. Now right off the bat, just hearing that, I'm sure a few of you are going to have some very choice words for me down in the comments. I'm going to try and be as balanced as possible for a lot of these, so let's just be mature and adult about these things, whether you hate it or love it. Let's not be children, because I can and will have stupid comments deleted. Okay, now with that out of the way, why is Ghostbusters 2016 so controversial? Well, this is put down to a few reasons. Firstly, back in 2016, there was a strong sentiment for completely shutting down ideas that we didn't like. Infinite Warfare, the Emoji Movie, and then this. Back in 2016, we really started to show big game and film studios that we weren't just going to sit there and take a movie that we really hated. Just looking on YouTube for the trailer, it gained 1.1 million dislikes, which doesn't put it too far behind the top 50 disliked videos on YouTube. With this being an unneeded reboot of the original beloved classic, people thought that this was a cash grab. It shared the same name, which in fairness, it might have been, but we'll get to that in a second. The second one is the elephant in the room. That's because it has an all-female cast, and the only man in the film is a complete From what I've gathered on YouTube comments, some people were angry because they were sexist. Yes, of course that's going to happen, but others saw this all-female reboot as a disingenuous way to try and earn a lot of money from women who wanted to watch female Ghostbusters. This wasn't woke, this was marketing. To add to this, there is a rumour that Paul Feig, the movie's director, called people who didn't like this movie a sexist. So add those all up and you've got a mix of neckbeards and non-neckbearded people who held the first movie up to a ridiculously high standard and hated this one. Now, it wouldn't matter in the end anyway, because this movie flopped hard at the box office, and Sony had to go back to the drawing board, with Ghostbusters Afterlife seeming to strike a better note with audiences despite it having a female Ghostbuster. So we'll just have to see how that movie goes. Joker is probably the most recent movie to be widely regarded as quite controversial, especially because of its depiction of society at time of release. I'm not going to pretend that incel behaviour is gone away by any means, but back in 2018 and 2019, the incels were at the top of their game. Now, just like a lot of movies further down this list, the reason why this is controversial is the portrayal of violence. Some people think that Joker glorifies acts of terrorism, it romanticizes aggression and promotes political violence. The movie is largely inspired by Martin Scorsese's King of Comedy, which takes a much more harsh and negative depiction of delusion within its protagonist. The film also came under fire after its release for including Gary Glitter's song Rock and Roll Part 2. If you don't know who Gary Glitter is, let's just say that he's behind bars for some very disturbing reasons. Anyways, there is nothing glamorous or cool about mental health issues, and while some people thought that this movie was an artistic powerhouse, others thought that it romanticizes incel behaviour. I know a lot of people here are younger and so will likely think of the former, but what do you think? I mean, the movie is called Joker, so there's going to be some form of controversy, that's par for the course, but what do you think about it? Justified or unjustified? South Park, bigger, longer and uncut. This one almost goes without saying. I mean, anyone who has seen South Park will know it's a controversial show, never afraid of pushing boundaries, so we'll keep this one quite short. Bigger, Longer and Uncut, released in 1999, focuses on censorship within our televisions and how parents who think that TV corrupts children are stupid. It was all a meta joke essentially, because parents saw the awful language and actions that South Park contains and tried to get the show cancelled. It's animated, children were watching it. It's bad, okay? The movie itself contains 399 swear words, including the song Kyle's Mum's a Bitch, in which the word bitch is said 56 times in English in 71 seconds. To add to this, there are 128 offensive gestures and 221 acts of violence spread throughout the movie, and this made the South Park movie land itself an R rating. Undeservedly so, thought the show's co-creator Matt Stone. On top of this, the movie's song Blame Canada was nominated for an Academy Award for Best Original Song, and so the aforementioned Matt Stone, as well as the show's other co-creator Trey Parker, dropped acid and went to the Oscars high as a kite, dressing as European models. A Clockwork Orange. Now, I've spoken about Stanley Kubrick a number of times now on this channel, which is amazing because I honestly haven't seen nearly as many of his movies as I should have. Clockwork Orange, though, I have seen, and if you've seen it, you might know the reason why this is deemed controversial, and that's because of its depiction of violence. Violence in the media is always a hot topic, and it's always the same argument. One person says, if you watch something on TV, you want to do it in real life, and then another person says, give me more credit, no I won't. A Clockwork Orange came out in 1971, and so you already know that there's a lot of stuff that we let fly today that wouldn't be allowed back then. One of which is, as the movie says itself, ultraviolence. From rape to brutal stabbings, there's very little that this film doesn't show or at the very least imply. The argument of violent media affecting you is only furthered by the fact that Stanley Kubrick actually pulled the movie from British cinemas after crime rose within the UK. Many people attributed this movie to their evil actions, and Kubrick, without even ever speaking about it, was forced to pull it from cinemas. It would remain off British screens for almost 30 years up until after Kubrick died, in which it was released yet again within British cinemas, and this time there were no kind of copycat stabbings or actions. Perhaps the film was just a bit too extreme for us Brits back in the 70s, got us a bit randy, but give us 30 years and we would catch up with the rest of the world. Ghost in the Shell. This isn't the first time I've spoken about this topic on my channel, and my opinion really hasn't changed. Ghost in the Shell is whitewashed from the original Japanese manga. Essentially, if you don't know the controversy, because it was quite big back in the day, 2017's Ghost in the Shell is based off a Japanese manga of the same name. It's set in Japan, the protagonist's name is Makoto Kusanagi, and she is played by Scarlett Johansson. In fact, most of the cast is Caucasian, despite the characters being predominantly of Asian descent. This whitewashing controversy cost the film dearly as it flopped quite heavily at the box office. This wasn't the first time a character's race has been flipped, and in all honesty, it won't be the last. The producers probably just wanted to use Johansson's star power to attract moviegoers, but this ended up costing the film. And so yeah, there should be a dialogue about this kind of stuff, race bending and race flipping, but maybe it's too much of a hot issue right now. Any Roman Polanski movie. Roman Polanski is undeniably one of the most famous directors of all time. Chinatown, Rosemary's Baby, The Pianist, Repulsion. He has made some of the most iconic and famous films ever. However, and this is where the controversies come in, the man is a straight up predator. He got called out by Harvey Weinstein of all people, which is the ultimate pot calling the kettle black of all time. So this is the age-old debate of the art versus the artist, and I think I've spoken about it before on a previous video, but I'd be interested to know, what do you think? Being a director of a film is so much more of an active role than anything else, but in Roman's case, Polanski is more than a director, he's an auteur. When he makes a film, it is a Roman Polanski movie. Some people will completely disregard them, and to be honest, I don't blame them. It's a fair point of view, especially if you're not a cinephile. Why watch the work of this monster? Especially if you don't study the art of filmmaking. Some of us though think that you can take someone's art without appreciating them as a person, which is also a very valid point. We do that all the time. I understand that this is probably as extreme of an example as you could ever get, but I want to know, can you personally, not Jemima or Chris sitting next to you, can you separate the art from the artist? What do you think about that? Please let me know down in the comments, because it's such an interesting debate for me personally. I am very intrigued by the concept. Chien Andalou. The chances are you probably haven't heard of this movie before. Some of you more than likely will have, and so well done for being a little clever clogs. For those of you who don't know this film though, you will definitely know one of the scenes. Directed by Luis Buñuel and artist Salvador Dali, both known for their avant-garde art, Chien Andalou is controversial because firstly of how nonsensical some people view it, but also because it contains one of cinema's first interpretations of gore. Some people find it to be a complete waste of time that has no meaning, whereas others think that it's actually a social commentary. To quote the Manchester media group, the film is either genius commentary on social anthropology or a bunch of nonsense. But love it or hate it, you'll watch the most controversial film ever created. It's all about this eye shot, which, by the way, trigger warning, I don't even know if I'm allowed to show this, but this is etched into moviegoers' heads. Made almost 100 years ago, this thing has such a shivering feeling to it. The film was shocking back then, it was controversial, especially at the time. It's a fantastic piece of abstract art, at least in my opinion, but nonetheless, it still is definitely debatable. The Last Temptation of Christ. Okay, any movie that revolves around religion is going to be controversial in one way or another, but Martin Scorsese's The Last Temptation of Jesus Christ probably takes the cake for the harshest response to any movie perhaps ever by an audience. The film depicts the life of Jesus Christ and his struggle with various forms of temptation, including fear, doubt, depression, reluctance, and lust. The last one was the kicker because the film depicts Jesus being tempted by imagining himself engaged in sexual activities. When this movie came out, the response. If you think that Scorsese was fazed by Marvel fans crying after he called Marvel movies not cinema, you would be dead wrong, because people committed acts of terrorism in response to this film. On October 22nd, 1988, an integrist Catholic group set fire to the Saint Michel cinema in Paris whilst it was showing the film, injuring 13, 4 of whom were severely burned. Scorsese received death threats, censorship, protests. Some cinemas pulled the film. Here's the thing though, Martin Scorsese was raised Catholic. Here he is meeting the Pope. Religion plays a huge part in many of his films. In a way, he spent his entire career dissecting religion, particularly the Catholic faith. According to Scorsese, this movie was meant to be an affirmation of faith, not denial. It was supposed to show the more human side of Jesus, but it was so controversial that people committed acts of terrorism against it, which is bonkers. I think that's got to be the harshest response on this list. Saved from the Titanic. Some of you who watched my Tales of Lost Media on the subject are going to know this story, so shout out to you lot. Each and every 2,500 of you. For those who didn't see the video, Saved from the Titanic was a 1912 silent film starring Dorothy Gibson as the protagonist. History scholars among you may have noticed that 1912 is a bit of an odd year to release a movie about the Titanic because the Titanic sunk to the depths of the Atlantic Ocean in 1912. They must have been hot off the mark to release this film, right? 29 days. It took them 29 days to release Saved from the Titanic after the sinking of the Titanic. The ship sank on April 15th, 1912. The movie was released on May 14th, 1912. What's even more interesting is that the movie's protagonist, Dorothy Gibson, was actually a survivor of the Titanic. She was on the first lifeboat. This movie was her story. She wore the same clothes that she did on that fateful night, and the shooting of the film traumatized her so much that it was her final film. She quit acting at the age of 23 because of it. When the picture was released, it received much praise, yes, but many people were angry at it. Many had relatives or loved ones who had passed away less than a month prior, and they felt that this film was insensitive. If you want to know anything more about the film or Dorothy Gibson's incredible life story, I'd recommend checking out my Tales of Lost Media video on it, because she lived such a fascinating life. It's undeniably interesting, which, if it's on Tales of Lost Media, goes without saying that the film is now lost media, unfortunately, so it's a very interesting story. Definitely check it out after this video. The Birth of a Nation is a bleak but sobering reminder of the world 100 years ago and how much we got wrong. Released in 1915, this 3-hour movie is straight up racist. It portrays the KKK as saving white America's sovereignty and values. Here's the thing, and this is what makes the film even worse, is that when it was released, from what I'm aware, the Klan wasn't a thing anymore. This is because the Klan went out of existence in 1871. The next wave of the Klan was made in 1915. I wonder where I heard that year before. Also, I think it should be mentioned that Woodrow Wilson, the USA's president during the First World War, he screened it at the White House during his presidency. He loved the film. This is the first movie to ever be screened at the White House, which is very telling, isn't it? And finally we have Teen Titans Go to the Movie. And that's it from me. I want to thank you for watching this video. This is my 50th video that I've ever made for the channel, and so if you enjoyed, please do subscribe. YouTube purged about 200 subscribers of mine a few days ago, and I really want to earn them back as quickly as possible, so please subscribe to the channel. Follow me on all my socials, that's my Twitter, Instagram, Twitch, all at Fox Akimbo. Support me on Patreon, and we actually have a new patron as of today, which is Chris, absolute legend. You know who you are. Shout out to Cage101101 as well. This iceberg was created by myself and a few members of the Fox Akimbo Discord, so shout out to us. Finally, let me know down in the comments what you'd like to see me do next, as I'm only 50 videos in and I'm already out of ideas. Thank you for watching.